Hey everyone, my name is Sara Harberson. I am America's college counselor. We are streaming live on both of my Facebook pages, Sara Harberson and Admissions Revolution. This is our monthly Facebook Live rapid fire Q&A where students, parents, college counselors can ask their questions of me. And I'll try to answer as many as I can. And we save these Facebook Lives so you can follow them from years ago, and we cover a lot of different topics in college admissions. So this is a great way for students and parents and college counselors, again, to get their questions answered, but also learn so much as well. Let me know where you are coming from, what state, what country. Are you a parent? If you are, what year of high school is your child? If you're a student, let me know the same. I love hearing from all of you. I should mention that you can find me in a lot of different locations. There are a lot of wonderful free resources on my website, saraharberson.com. If you want to be a part of Application Nation, those are my college counseling online communities through Facebook. You can sign up for that on my website as well. You can follow me on Instagram, and if you can believe it, I'm actually on TikTok as well. There are some great videos that give you some tips about the admissions process and some common popular topics that I get asked a lot. But I think we've already got some questions from all of you coming in. I'd love to answer them. Let's get started. First question, does class rank matter if your child is at a highly ranked public school? High school is ranked 109th in the nation. So here's the thing about class rank. Most high schools, I should say, in the country no longer use class rank, but there's still a good chunk of them, a good fraction of those high schools that do. If your high school still uses class rank and provides that to the colleges that you've applied to, it absolutely will influence and be a factor in the admissions process. And so if you're looking at highly selective colleges, they look at that class rank almost immediately. That's the thing that a lot of students don't realize is before an admissions officer starts reading the different pieces of your application, they get a snapshot of you. They look at your name, your race, your high school, the state you're coming from, what major you're applying to, what your test scores are, what your class rank is. So they look at that information before they really delve into your application because they can tell a lot just by that information. And if the class rank doesn't match up with what the college is expecting, even if it is a highly ranked high school, that admissions officer may not spend as much time reading your application. That's why it's so important to have a well-balanced college list. All right, next question. My daughter and I are finding your information so helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Jane. We read your blog about early decision. Do you recommend students apply early decision even if their first choice school is a reach? Well, I'm so glad that you have gotten a lot out of my blogs. I write them every single week. I rarely miss a week in the year. Jane is referring to one of my early decision blogs. Early decision, for if you are just joining us and learning about the admissions process, that is a program that a lot of private colleges will offer, although there are a couple public universities that offer early decision programs like William & Mary. And it essentially is a program for students that see that college as their top choice. And by applying early decision, they sign a binding agreement which says if the student is admitted, they will enroll at that institution. So oftentimes students use early decision to give them an edge in the admissions process because the acceptance rate is going to be higher in early decision because it helps the student and it helps the college because they lock in that student. Here's the thing though, when I am working with a family and creating a college list for them, what I tell them is every single college on your list you should be competitive for, meaning your objective criteria matches up with that middle 50% range for admitted students at that college. And this is different because 10, 20, 30 years ago, a lot of students would use early decision to apply to that far reach college, their dream school. that maybe they weren't competitive for, but by applying early decision, it gave them an even bigger edge in the admissions process. Nowadays, we've got to be careful. We've got to make sure that every college on the list, even that early decision choice, if it is a reach college for you, that you are within reach of getting admitted. And you want to be looking at the most recent admissions profile for that college or university to get a better sense of whether your objective pieces of the application will match up. Next question, do SAT scores still matter for admission to more elite schools this year? Do they matter for merit money? So unless you're applying to a test-blind college or university, and there are a handful of them in our country, the University of California system, for example, is test-blind. If you're applying to those colleges, your test scores will not matter at all. Even if you try to submit them, they will be blocked from the admissions officer viewing them. However, most colleges either require or make standardized testing optional. If you submit your test scores, they will absolutely get factored into the admissions process. So when a student is determining, should they be submitting their test scores, I tell them, do your test scores match your high school transcript? And if they are as strong or even stronger, you definitely want to submit them, and they will get factored into the admissions process. When a student is applying to those highly selective colleges, I tell students, you want to have higher test scores to stay competitive in the applicant pool, but your high test scores alone won't get you admitted to those highly selective colleges. However, if you're applying to colleges that have a higher acceptance rate, for example, where your test scores are significantly higher than the middle 50% range, not only could it help you in the admissions process, but it can also help you get those merit scholarships. My team and I are putting together the merit money and merit data that our Application Nation class of 2021 received this year. We are about to finalize it, and we'll be sharing it with our Application Nation families. We have students this past year that received over $61 million in merit scholarships. And what's so interesting is as our team looks at the data, students' records are not perfect. Their test scores aren't even perfect. It goes to show you, though, that these colleges, not all, but a lot of colleges are using merit scholarships as a way to get students to enroll, and a lot of times it can work. Next question. What are your thoughts about declaring a major versus applying undecided? I have pretty strong feelings about it, especially if you are applying to private colleges and universities with lower acceptance rates, like highly selective colleges, because I know what it's like to be an admissions officer, to be an associate dean, to be a dean of admissions, reading applications. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, before I would even start reading those letters of recommendation or reading those essays or looking at the extracurricular activities list, I was looking at that snapshot of who that student was. Again, name, high school, state, because geography can matter, test scores, class rank or GPA, and the major. Because admissions officers are going to be looking for different things in your application depending on the major that you indicate on your application. So for example, business right now, the most popular major being listed on a college application. If an admissions officer opens up an application from a student who's applying for their business program, they're going to be looking for certain things. They want to see that the student is taking calculus by senior year, ideally. The student has done extremely well in their math classes. The student has, if scores are available, stronger math scores than their evidence-based reading and writing score on the SAT or their other sub-scores of the ACT. They want to be looking to see if the student has evidence on their extracurricular activities list to back up that business interest. So you can see that based on the major, the admissions officer is going to be looking for certain things and reading your application in a very specific way. If you are applying to your local state university or a public university and you're looking at liberal arts programs, you listing a major may not matter as much, especially if the acceptance rate is high. But at those highly selected colleges, They're really looking to see evidence to back up that major choice. And also I have to remember what it was like to read these applications. And when I worked at Penn, for example, that is a university that requires supplemental essays. And one of the supplemental essays is, why are you interested in our university, basically, and why are you interested in the academic major that you've listed on your application? That essay really needs to back up the student's major listed. And if the student is indicating undecided, it's a lot harder for that student to write that supplemental essay, and it's a lot harder for the admissions officer to get a feel for what that student will pursue academically speaking. So that's why I recommend listing a major. All right. Does it hurt you if you don't submit standardized tests, even though a school is test optional? It is not going to hurt you if you don't submit standardized tests for a college that is test optional, as long as everything else in your application is really, really strong. It's not going to hurt you at all. Next question. Are school subject awards worth mentioning in the honor section? For example, awards from AP classes or distinguished honor roll or pertaining to the school. Yes, these are academic honors and awards that students can list. So a lot of you are going to be filling out the common application, but frankly, any application you fill out, there's usually a space for you to indicate honors or awards. At least on the common app, the wording is that they're looking for academic awards. But not every student has them, or they don't remember all the different academic honors that they've received. But yes, those school awards can be listed. If your school gives out what are called book awards, some of the more selective colleges sometimes will offer a book award at the local high school. That's voted on by the faculty of the high school. So I know that some regions of the country will have the Penn Book Award or the Harvard Book Award or the Princeton Book Award. If a student gets that, I would definitely want them to list that, because even though there are a lot of students getting those book awards across the country, if you get it, it's a clear indication of how much respect the teachers at your high school have for you. But if you have made honor roll, if you were invited to National Honor Society, these are all traditional academic honors that you can list there. Next question. What advice would you give to Asian students applying to elite schools? Well, this is a topic that I have spent a lot of my career dedicated to. I've written op-eds that have been published in the LA Times. I write blogs about this. I talk about this. As you all know, I'm from New Jersey. I tell it like it is, and I tell all of you what really goes on in the admissions process. For decades, Asian American students were disadvantaged in the admissions process, especially at private elite colleges and universities, meaning they had to achieve a higher bar to get admitted based on test scores, grades, curriculum, and everything else in the application. But there have been several independent groups that have sued some of these elite institutions, and although they haven't won all of their cases, I will say that it has made such a positive impact on Asian American students and the admissions process, because nowadays these elite colleges can no longer discriminate behind closed doors. So it is my belief always that Asian American students, all types of students, should self-identify their race. A lot of those Asian American students were afraid to self-identify on their application because they were worried that they would be discriminated against in the admissions process. Nowadays, by self-identifying, you are protecting yourself. These elite schools wouldn't dare discriminate if you have self-identified. If you don't self-identify, those admissions officers are going to make assumptions anyway, based on your first name, your last name, your home address, anything in your application. So it is my belief to set the record straight and self-identify. I will also say, so many, especially first generation and second generation Americans, are worried that that would be held against them in the admissions process, and they don't want to write college essays about it. But I would say your cultural background, your ethnicity, if it means something to you, it can translate into an absolutely breathtaking essay. So don't be afraid to do that, especially nowadays. Next question, what is self-reporting of test scores? This is a huge trend in college admissions even before the pandemic hit. And I would say at this point, the majority of colleges are going to ask for self-reported test scores. So what are self-reported test scores? It means that instead of sending an official score report from the College Board with your SAT scores, for example, or even your AP scores, or using an official score report from the ACT, you can put your best scores usually right on the common application, the coalition application, or in some cases the institution's own specific application. Why do colleges allow that? Well, they want students to be honest, and they're going to be using those self-reported scores if they allow and ask for them. Sometimes they require self-reported scores. They're going to be looking at them for admissions purposes. If the student is admitted and decides to enroll, that student would need to send an official score report to that college where they're planning to go. And then the admissions office is going to be comparing the self-reported scores that you indicated on your application to the official score report to make sure that they match up. But, you know, everything that colleges do, they're not doing it for you and me. They're doing it for themselves. What they don't tell you is that by using self-reported scores, it really can speed up the processing of all the pieces of the application, because they're already processing the common application a lot of times. If they are requiring official test scores from 50,000 students that apply, you can imagine they have to process all of those score reports, and a lot of times students will send multiple score reports. So by forcing students to self-report right on the application, it speeds up processing for them and makes it a lot easier because it's already in the template that they use. What they will tell you though is that they're trying to save you all money, because those score reports do cost money, and that is true, and I appreciate that, but at the same time it really helps them more than anything else. And here is a little tip about test scores, especially for those younger students who are going to be taking the SAT or ACT for the first time. When you register or sign up or go to take the test, you're going to be asked if you want to send your scores to 4 colleges, because students get 4 free score reports with their registration fee when they take the SAT or ACT. Most students are like, oh, this is so cool. My top 4 colleges right now are Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford. Even though this is the first time I'm taking the SAT, they should get my scores, right? Makes sense. No, you want to make sure that you get to see your scores first before they are sent to a college or university. Because if you list a college to get your SAT or ACT scores, they're going to get it the same day that you got it. And if that's your first time taking it, a lot of times that could be your lowest score. And a lot of students do not want to show their lowest scores to these colleges. So I would say keep in mind that for the most part, you're going to be providing self-reported test scores. You won't have to spend the money until the very end of the process. When you are finalizing your enrollment, you'll have to send an official score report to the college where you're going to be enrolling. All right, next question. How do you appeal for financial aid as a middle-class student? Can you use offers from other colleges as evidence? You can. So there are all these dirty little secrets about college admissions that most admissions officers will never share. They just don't tell you everything that happens behind closed doors. But the truth is, yes, you can appeal your financial aid award. Ready for this? You can even appeal your merit scholarship award as well. You will have the most leverage if you are in an early action or regular decision pool and you got admitted through that way instead of early decision, for example, because early decision you are locked in. But for those early action and regular decision students that are going to be comparing the different financial aid need-based awards that they get and merit scholarships, yes, if there is a college that you want to attend and they didn't give you as much need-based aid or merit scholarships that another college did, yes, you can appeal it. And I would say that you will have, again, the most leverage if you are providing a scholarship or a need-based award of a college that is seen as an equal to the college that you want more money from. And I recommend, usually there's a form that the institution requires, but also you could do it through email to your admissions officer, to the financial aid officer that you're working with, and I want you to attach the need-based offer or merit scholarship from that other college. Because if another college gave you more money, you want to show evidence of that and proof of it. And that's going to give you a better shot of getting more money from the college that you want. All right, next question. How about taking eight AP classes and not reporting it on the application? How does it look in admissions? So here's the thing. This is what surprised a lot of families. AP scores are almost always not required for college admissions for any college or university. There are a few exceptions. I want to say Georgetown and MIT want to see every single AP score that you have, even if you don't want to share that with MIT and Georgetown. But for the most part, AP scores are optional, just like with class rank. If you provide that information, or test scores, if you provide that information, it will become a part of your application. And I can remember being at the University of Pennsylvania and being so tough, or the admissions committee was so tough on these students who were applying. One little thing, 4 instead of a 5 on an AP exam could be a reason, especially why a highly selective college doesn't admit its student. So it's my belief to only put those AP scores on your application. Self-reporting is appropriate here. You don't need to send an official score report. It would literally list every single AP score that you got. Self-reporting is fine, but you don't have to self-report all of your AP scores. When I'm working with Application Nation families, they literally will ask me which scores they should be sending or self-reporting to all the colleges on their list. Because my advice is going to vary depending on the student, depending on the colleges on their list, and depending on the major too. Because if that lower AP score is in the subject matter that the student wants to major in and they're applying to a highly selected college, that can be the reason why they're not admitted. So this is for students especially who are applying to highly selected colleges. When you report or provide information like that, it will get factored into the admissions process. And these elite colleges and universities with single-digit acceptance rates, they are looking for the smallest little reason to deny a student. So keep that in mind. What if your student has excellent ACT scores, has taken AP and honors, but struggled with a few grades? How does that impact the review for admissions? So what I will say is always the high school transcript carries the most weight. So your rigor of your curriculum based on what's offered at your high school and the final grades that you get in your core classes. But if your college list is balanced, having those high ACT scores for the colleges on your list and having good grades but not perfect grades is going to be fine. It really depends on the colleges that are on your list. But when you're building your college list, and we just talked about this tonight with the Application Nation younger group, you've got to make sure that your high school transcript is driving that college list, because nowadays, a lot of times, test scores are optional. How do dual enrollment classes affect your application? Okay, so dual enrollment classes are more common at public high schools. A lot of times, students will be able to choose from honors, AP classes, IB classes. That's the International Baccalaureate program if it's offered at your high school. And sometimes your high school is going to offer what are called dual enrollment or dual credit classes. Basically, they are giving the student credit for high school graduation, but it can also count towards their college education. Sometimes the class is actually taught at your high school by your teachers. Sometimes it's taught at your local community college or local university, but you get credit on your high school transcript and you also get credit towards your college degree. Dual enrollment classes can be extremely helpful for a student who knows that they're going to be staying in state for college and plans to go to a state college or university. A lot of times those dual credit classes will count towards their college degree. But if a student is applying to a private college or a college outside of their state, the likelihood that the student is going to get credit for those dual credit classes towards their college degree is very low. So if you are looking at especially highly selective colleges and universities, I would highly encourage you to take AP classes over dual credit or dual enrollment classes, because those admissions officers see the AP classes as more rigorous. I don't know if that's true. I think it really depends on the teacher and the class and the high school, but in the college admissions world, they want to see those AP classes, especially if you're applying to highly selective colleges. And when I was at Penn, we used to talk about double dipping. You know, we didn't want students double dipping. We didn't want them getting credit for a class for high school graduation and getting credit towards their college degree. And for the most part these days, colleges are going to be really stingy about giving you credit. They want you on their campus for all 4 years, paying tuition, and in some cases living on campus for all 4 years, because it generates a lot more revenue. Next question. Is there a private high school advantage over public schools for college acceptance? I think if we were to go back in time 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, yes, absolutely. But over the last decade, the colleges that were really giving those advantages to students who attended private high schools has been dwindling. They want to make sure that they are leveling the playing field and making sure that they give students coming from all different high schools, all different backgrounds, all different socioeconomic backgrounds, a chance at admission. So that private school advantage is not what it used to be. It's my belief that whether you go to a private or a public high school, it's not about what high school you go to, it's about what you do while you're there. And the same thing goes for colleges. It's not about what college you go to, it's about what you do while you're there. All right, next question. High school courses that I took in middle school are causing my GPA to not be a 4, which is why my class rank isn't as high. How do colleges look at that? This is a really good question, because a lot of you who are high achieving students, you took high school classes as a middle school student. And depending on your school district, depending on your school, they could appear on your high school transcript. And a lot of times, sometimes I should say, they factor into your weighted GPA or your weighted class rank. And so if your grades were B's in those high school classes that you took in middle school, but your grades in high school are all A's, those B's from 8th grade could factor in and impact your class rank. So if class rank is available, if a weighted GPA is available, and also the school provides basically a percentage or a decile ranking, admissions officers are going to be able to figure out where you place in the class. But if that's not provided, most of the highly selective colleges actually will recalculate your GPA based on 9th grade on and focusing much more on those academic classes. You will find that most highly selective colleges will recalculate your GPA, and they won't factor in any high school classes that you took before high school. Next question, does first generation students have any impact on admission? Does being a first generation student have any impact on admission? So first generation is a wonderful thing. Yes, it has a big impact in admissions, but there are two different kinds. There is that first generation American student. That's a student who is the first generation within their family to grow up in the United States. That is still a very small fraction of most applicant pools, so that can be an advantage to the admissions process. But also, as you look at the more selective colleges, they're trying to diversify their student body on many levels, and a lot of times income is associated with whether or not parents went to college. So you could be a first-generation college student, meaning neither parent went to a 4-year college. In some cases, some colleges will say even if you went to a community college, it will count. But if you were a first-generation American or a first-generation college student, yes, that can factor into the admissions process. Basically, any selective college that uses what's called holistic admissions, they're going to be factoring in all the things that you think of when you think of a college application, but all the other things that you don't think about. Your gender, your race, your home address, the major you're listing, your socioeconomic background. All of those things can factor in can factor into the admissions process. And I would say at the more selective colleges, being first gen American and first gen college student can definitely help. Next question. If I apply test optional, will the school know you actually took the SAT? Doesn't really matter. If they're test optional, they embrace the test optional policy. And here's the definition of being a test optional institution. I love this because I think it gets lost sometimes. It doesn't mean that a pandemic hit and you weren't able to take any tests. Test optional means that whether you had an opportunity to take the test or not, you are not required to submit those test scores. You have the option. And so for any college that adopts a permanent test optional policy or even a temporary one, they know that they can't think about, did the student have an opportunity to take a test? Is the student, not testing as well? The fact is that if you don't submit test scores, they can't hold that against you. You just have to make sure that the rest of your application, as I said earlier, is as competitive as possible. All right, last question. Do admissions officers not want students to write essays which expand on extracurriculars or a passion that is clear in the rest of the application? Awesome question. All right, so I feel like I devote my life to answering this question. In Application Nation, when I am working with families, I want to approve every student's main essay topic because I know that it's not just about how well written the college essay is, it's about the topic. And so the best topics that students write about for their main college essay are things that do not show up anywhere else on their application. You have to remember, these admissions officers are reading hundreds of applications a day, sometimes 200-300 essays a day. They want to be surprised. They want to learn something new about you. So when it comes to the main college essay, I never approve a college essay about an extracurricular activity or even an academic interest, because if that student is applying to selective colleges, they're going to see supplemental essay prompts that are going to ask exactly that. So the main essay shouldn't be an extension of your extracurricular activities list or something else in your application. Make sure to give those admissions officers, those colleges, something that they've never seen before. On that note, it was really good to see you all. I hope you all are having a great summer. Just remember, I'm always here. You can check out my weekly blog, check out my Instagram lives, even my TikTok videos. And if you want to work directly with me, check out Application Nation. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.